My own son called me crazy. He locked me in an asylum hoping I would disappear so he could steal every penny my late husband and I worked for. He just didn't count on one thing. The senile old woman here was a lot smarter than he realized. You know, there's something about being underestimated that awakens a strength you never knew existed. Over 50 years of marriage, Frank and I built our lives brick by brick. We saved every dollar, invested carefully, and when he passed, he left me not only a financial inheritance, but a promise. Evelyn, you are stronger than you think. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. I thought this promise would be tested by the normal challenges of widowhood. I never imagined it would be tested by my own blood. Hello, my dears. You can call me Evelyn. Today, at 80 years old, I am living the best phase of my life. But it wasn't always like this. The story I'm going to tell happened a few years ago, in our quiet town in Pennsylvania, a place where everyone knew each other, where neighbors looked out for each other, and where I never imagined that the greatest betrayal would come from inside my own home. I'm a mother, a grandmother, and for decades, a wife. Frank was the love of my life for half a century. When he passed away 10 years ago, I felt like I'd lost not only my partner, but my identity. Who was Evelyn without Frank? That question haunted me for months. Our only son, Robert, was born when I was 25. He was our joy, our pride. He graduated in business administration, worked for several companies, and always kept in touch with us. When Frank died, Robert became my anchor. I trusted him more than I trusted myself. That was my first mistake. Before we delve deeper into this painful but transformative memory, I ask that if you enjoy stories of resilience and justice, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I read every comment and they warm my heart. You have no idea how much your words mean to a woman my age. I also want you to know that this story is true. Every word I'm about to tell happened exactly as I describe. It may seem hard to believe that a son would do this to his own mother, but unfortunately, stories like mine are more common than we'd like to admit. Now, come with me on a journey that has completely changed who I am. Our house in Pennsylvania was a dream come true. A 2-story house with a garden that I cultivated with as much love as Frank cultivated his relationship with me. We had 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen where I prepared the family's favorite meals, and a living room where we spent evenings watching television or simply talking. Frank worked as a civil engineer for the city government. I was a primary school teacher for almost 30 years. Our salaries weren't high, but we were disciplined. We had a strict budget, invested a fixed percentage each month, and never, ever bought anything we couldn't pay for outright. When Frank retired, our house had been paid off for 15 years. We had a robust savings account, some conservative investments, and most importantly, we had peace. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Very comfortable. Robert always knew this. From a young age, he saw how careful his parents were with money. We never went without, but he also knew that every purchase was planned. Perhaps that's why he developed shall we say, an admiration for the wealth we built. After Frank's death, my routine changed completely. I would wake up early, as always, make my coffee, and sit on the porch overlooking the garden. Every Wednesday, my friends from the book club would come over for tea. On Sundays, Robert would come over for lunch, and the house would be filled with the aroma of the roast beef he'd loved since childhood. It was a simple life, but full of meaning. I had my independence, my dignity, and what I believed to be the unconditional love of my son. The changes began subtly, as most betrayals do. Robert started visiting more often, which initially made me happy. What a thoughtful son, I thought. He began asking questions about my finances, how I was dealing with the banks, whether I was confused with the bills. "Mom, are you sure you paid the electric bill this month?" he'd ask, even though he knew I'd always been meticulous about my responsibilities. "Do you remember where you kept that insurance document?" Seemingly innocent questions, but they planted seeds of doubt about my own competence. One day, he arrived with a folder of documents. "Mom, I brought you some papers to sign. It's just a simple power of attorney," he said with that gentle smile I'd known since he was a baby. "That way, I can help you with the banks, pay your bills when you forget, take care of the paperwork. You don't have to worry about these things at your age." At my age? Those words echoed in my mind. I was 78, but I felt clear-headed, capable, independent. But my son was looking at me with those eyes full of concern, and I began to question my own perception. "It's just for emergencies," he insisted. "If something happens to you, at least I can take care of your things." And then he said the magic words. "It's what Dad would want us to do." How dare he invoke my Frank's name? But it worked. With a heavy heart, but genuinely believing I was doing the right thing, I signed. I signed my own financial death warrant. Over the next few months, my life seemed to get easier, and I felt guilty for having doubted my son's intentions. Robert took over paying all my bills. He gave me a weekly allowance for my basic needs, saying it was more practical that way. "Now you don't have to worry about anything, Mom. Just enjoy your retirement," he'd say, and I was grateful. What a fool I'd been. The changes started small. My monthly magazine subscription was canceled. "It was too expensive, Mom. You can read it at the library." My cable plan was reduced to the basics. "You didn't watch all those channels anyway." Then, things started disappearing. First was my mother's emerald ring, a piece I'd kept for decades. When I asked about it, Robert was concerned about my memory. "Mom, don't you remember? You told me last week that you put it in the bank safe deposit box for safekeeping." But I didn't remember saying that. Had I really forgotten? Next came the pearl brooch Frank gave me for our 20th anniversary. Then some china plates that belonged to his family. Always the same explanation. I had decided to keep them in a safer place and had forgotten them. I began to question my own mind. Was I really becoming forgetful? Was my son right to be worried? These doubts consumed me. And the more I doubted myself, the more I depended on him. Robert began to control not only my finances, but also my social life. "Your friends' visits are making you very tired, Mom. Maybe you should cut back a bit." Gradually, my world shrank until he was the only one left. It was my longtime neighbor, Mrs. Gable, who planted the first real seed of doubt. Dorothy Gable had lived next door to us for over 20 years. She was an observant woman, the kind who knows every car that passes by on the street and all her neighbors' schedules. One Tuesday afternoon, as I was watering my rose bushes in front of the house, she approached with a worried expression I had never seen before. "Evelyn, dear, I don't mean to be nosy, but I need to tell you something." She looked around, as if checking if anyone could hear us. "Yesterday afternoon, I saw a real estate agent leaving your house. It was that guy from Johnson Realty. I recognized him. He was with Robert, and they seemed to be, well, discussing business." My blood ran cold. I hadn't put my house on the market. I hadn't even mentioned any interest in selling or moving. Why would there be a real estate agent in my house? "Are you sure, Dorothy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Absolutely. They were talking in your front yard for almost an hour. The realtor had that clipboard they always carry and seemed to be measuring the front of the house with his eyes." She paused. "Evelyn, are you thinking of selling?" "No," I replied automatically. "No, I'm not." That night, when Robert came to bring me dinner, yes, he had even taken on that responsibility, saying I was forgetting to eat properly. I confronted him. "Robert, Mrs. Gable told me she saw a broker here yesterday. What was he doing?" His reaction was strange. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something in his eyes. Anger? Fear? But quickly, he smiled and shook his head. "Oh, Mom, poor Dorothy's getting a little paranoid at her age, you know? It was just a friend of mine who works in insurance. We came to look at the house to see if we need to update the policy. You know how these old houses are. They always need little adjustments to the insurance coverage." It seemed like a reasonable explanation, but something about the way he avoided my gaze bothered me. And why hadn't he told me about this before? Why didn't he just explain it to me when I asked? That night, I couldn't sleep. Something was wrong, very wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. At 2 a.m, I went down to the kitchen to make some chamomile tea, hoping it would calm me down. That's when I heard Robert's voice coming from Frank's office. He was speaking softly on the phone, but in the stillness of the night, every word came through with crystal clarity. "Yes, Dr. Matthews. She's getting worse every day. Yesterday, she completely forgot that she had authorized me to handle her financial matters. Today, she was asking about a broker who's never been here. I'm genuinely concerned about the progression of her dementia." "Dementia? What dementia? I didn't have dementia." I heard Robert take a deep breath before continuing. "I need you to sign the papers as soon as possible. If we wait any longer, she might have a moment of lucidity during the process and complicate everything. Sunset Meadows Nursing Home already has a place reserved for her. Once we get her admitted, I can proceed with the sale of the house." My knees nearly buckled. I leaned against the wall, unable to breathe properly. Was he planning to commit me? Sell my house? "Don't worry," Robert continued, his tone cold and calculating, nothing like the loving son I thought I knew. "She won't even know what's going on. I chose Sunset Meadows precisely because it's the cheapest in the area, and they don't ask many questions. With the money from the sale of the house and her savings, I can keep up the payments for decades if necessary. For decades if necessary, as if my life were just a financial inconvenience to be managed." I heard him laugh, a sound that chilled me to the bone. "Honestly, doctor, sometimes I think she's pretending to be more lucid than she really is. But it doesn't matter, your papers will solve that." I stood there, hidden behind the door, listening to my own son plot against me as if I were a stranger. Not just to steal me, but to erase my existence. It was a cold, meticulous, cruel plan. When he finally hung up the phone, I walked up the stairs silently, like a shadow. But the Evelyn who climbed those steps wasn't the same one who had come down. Something fundamental had changed in me in that moment. That was the longest night of my life. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt waves of emotion wash over me like raging tides. First came the pain, a deep, visceral pain, as if someone had ripped out a piece of my heart. This was my son, my baby, the child I held in my arms at the maternity ward and swore to protect forever. How could he have become someone capable of such cruel betrayal? Then came the betrayal. Not just the financial betrayal, but the emotional betrayal. All those months he pretended to care about me. All those moments he made me question my own sanity. He had systematically manipulated my confidence, my self-esteem, my very perception of reality. Then came the shame. Shame for having been so naive, so trusting, so stupid. How could I not see the signs? How had I allowed him to convince me that I was losing my sanity? But suddenly, in the middle of the night, something extraordinary happened. All these emotions crystallized into a single, powerful force. Rage. Not explosive, destructive rage, but a cold, calculating, intelligent rage. I got out of bed and looked at myself in the mirror in my bedroom. The woman staring back at me was no longer the frail, confused widow Robert thought I was. She was someone I didn't know, but recognized immediately. She was a warrior. If he wants a senile old woman, I muttered to my reflection, that's exactly what he'll get. But beneath that facade, a lioness is plotting her revenge. In that moment, the Evelyn who had trusted her son so blindly died. In her place was born a woman Frank would have been proud to know, one who would not allow herself to be victimized without a fight. I knew I only had one chance to turn this around. If I failed, Robert would have me committed and I would lose everything. So my plan had to be perfect. First, I needed allies. But I couldn't trust just anyone. Robert had carefully crafted a narrative about my mental decline for many people. I needed someone who knew my true nature and had the legal power to help me. The answer came in the form of a memory. Mr. Davies. Harold Davies had been my husband's lawyer for over 20 years. He was a man of integrity, discreet, and knowledgeable about the entire history of our estate. If anyone could help me, it would be him. But I needed to contact him without Robert knowing. Over the next few days, I meticulously studied my son's routine. He would arrive at 9 a.m., stay until noon, leave for lunch and work, and return at 6 a.m. to bring me dinner. The following Thursday, at 2 p.m., I called Mr. Davies' office. When he answered, I used our old code word, something Frank had established years ago for emergencies. Mr. Davies, she said in a tremulous, carefully rehearsed voice. I'm Evelyn Morrison. Robert is handling all my financial matters now, but I'd really like you to review some paperwork for the possible sale of our house, just to make sure everything is as Frank would like it to be. The silence on the other end of the line told me he understood perfectly. Mr. Davies was perceptive. He had seen many similar cases throughout his career. Sure, Mrs. Morrison. How about I come by your house tomorrow afternoon so we can go over everything together? Say 3? Perfect, I replied. But Mr. Davies, I'd like this to be our little surprise for Robert. You know how worried children get when they think their mothers are burdening herself with legal matters. I understand perfectly, he said, and I knew I had an ally. Over the next few days, I continued to play my role of confused elderly woman to Robert, while secretly working with Mr. Davies to fully understand what my son had done and how we could reverse it. Mr. Davies worked quickly. Within a week, he had uncovered the full extent of Robert's fraud. The medical report was fake. Dr. Matthews was actually an acquaintance of Robert's, who agreed to falsify documents for money. The reservation at Sunset Meadows nursing home was real. The contract for the sale of my house was already being drawn up. Even more disturbing, Robert had opened a bank account in my name and was transferring money from my actual savings into it. His plan was to use this account to pay for nursing home care while he kept the bulk of my inheritance. Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Davies said during our secret meeting, what your son is doing is not only immoral, it's criminal. We have more than enough evidence to prosecute him for fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of the elderly. No, I replied firmly, not yet. I want him to get to the end. I want him to feel like he's won before he finds out he's lost everything. Mr. Davies looked at me with a mixture of surprise and admiration. What do you have in mind? My plan was simple but devastating. We would allow Robert to proceed with the sale of the house. We would let him believe he had successfully committed me. On the day of the final signing of the sales documents, the moment he would think he had secured my inheritance, I would show up. He's underestimated me all his life, I explained to Mr. Davies. Now he's going to pay for it in front of witnesses, so that his humiliation will be as public as his betrayal. The day arrived. It was a cold Tuesday in October. Robert had admitted me to Sunset Meadows 3 days earlier. The place was even worse than I'd imagined. Dimly lit hallways, the smell of cheap disinfectant, and overworked and apathetic staff. But I knew it was temporary. At 2 p.m., Mr. Davies discreetly picked me up. I put on my best navy blue suit. the same one I'd worn to Frank's funeral, carefully combed my hair, and put on my favorite red lipstick. We walked into the law office at exactly 3 a.m., just as Robert was signing the final sales contract. The room was full. Robert, the buyer, a young couple who wanted my house to raise their children, the real estate agent, and the buyer's attorney. When the door opened and I walked in, followed by Mr. Davies, the silence was deafening. Robert went pale as a sheet. Mom, he stammered. What are you doing here? You should be in the nursing home. I finished, my voice clear and strong. Yes, Robert, I should be in the nursing home, where you put me based on a fraudulent medical report, so you could sell my house behind my back. The impact of my words was immediate. The young couple looked at each other in alarm. The real estate agent closed his documents. The buyer's attorney rose from his chair. Mrs. Morrison, said the buyer's lawyer, is there something wrong with the sale? We have been informed that you are not mentally fit to participate in the transaction. I smiled. Not a kind smile, but a smile that showed the war had begun. What followed was the systematic destruction of the lie my son had constructed. Mr. Davies presented all the evidence, the forged documents, the unauthorized bank transfers, the conspiracy to commit me against my will. The young couple, horrified by what they were witnessing, immediately canceled the purchase. They wanted nothing to do with a property obtained through fraud. Robert tried to defend himself, but every word that came out of his mouth only made his situation worse. She really does have dementia, he insisted desperately. Ask anyone. She forgets things, gets confused. The only thing I've forgotten, I replied calmly, is how I raised a son capable of such cruelty. But that, Robert, is a lesson I'll never forget. His humiliation was complete and public. Everyone in the room saw the man who had tried to rob his own mother exposed for the criminal he truly was. Over the next few months, I prosecuted Robert for fraud, document forgery, and financial exploitation of the elderly. He lost the case spectacularly. He was ordered to return all the money he had stolen, pay substantial fines, and perform community service. More important than the money was what happened to his reputation. Our town was small, and news like this spread quickly. Robert lost the respect of everyone who knew him. He lost his clients, his friends, and his standing in the community. As for me, I discovered something extraordinary, my ability to start over at age 78. I sold the house, on my terms and for the price I wanted, and used the money to buy this beautiful apartment in a retirement community. Here, I'm surrounded by people who respect me, value me, and see me as the strong woman I've always been, but had forgotten how to be. I have dance classes, reading groups, new friends, and most importantly, I have my dignity back. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me ended up being the catalyst for the best phase of my life. I discovered an inner strength I didn't even know I possessed. A strategic intelligence I'd underestimated. And a capacity for a fresh start that many people half my age don't possess. You know, my dears, there are people who ask if I feel remorse for what I did to Robert, if I miss him, if I would forgive him if he apologized. The truth is complex. I miss the son I thought he was, but not the man he turned out to be. As for forgiveness, well, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it certainly doesn't mean allowing someone to keep hurting you. Robert made his choices. He chose to see my age as weakness, my trust as stupidity, my love as vulnerability. He bet I was too weak to fight, too old to learn, too foolish to see through his lies. He was wrong on all those bets. If there's one lesson I want to leave you with, especially the older folks who may be watching me, it's this. Never let anyone convince you that your age makes you vulnerable or disabled. Our experience is our strength. Our wisdom is our weapon. Our determination can move mountains. And for the younger ones, remember that one day you too will be old. Treat your parents, grandparents, and the elderly in general with the respect you would like to receive. because time passes for all of us, and what you sow today is what you will reap tomorrow. Today, at 80, I am happier, stronger, and freer than I was at 70. This was only possible because I refused to be a victim, because I fought for my dignity, and because I discovered that it is never too late to stand up for what is right. If my story touched you in any way, if it offered hope to someone going through a similar situation, then every painful moment was worth it. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me your own stories of overcoming. I read them all, and each one makes me even stronger. Like this video if you believe it's never too late to fight for your rights. Subscribe to the Whispers from Grandma channel for more real stories of overcoming challenges and wisdom, and hit the bell so you don't miss any episodes. Do you know what I'm most proud of this journey? It's not just getting my money back or exposing the truth about Robert. It's discovering that the strong woman Frank always said I was had never disappeared. She was just sleeping, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Every morning, when I wake up in this apartment I chose with my own hands, using my own money, making my own decisions, I'm grateful for having found the courage to fight. I'm grateful for not having settled for victimhood. And do you know what the greatest revenge I got against Robert was? It wasn't seeing him sued. It wasn't getting my money back. It was making me genuinely happy. It was rebuilding my life in a way he never imagined possible. It was, and never, ever underestimate the power of a determined person, regardless of age. Until next time, my dears, stay strong, stay wise, and always stay true to yourself. With all my love, Grandma Evelyn.